happens when you've got a strong woman for a mother? Like, what happens if your mother is powerful and she shows you how to be a powerful woman? I mean, you have that, and then on the other side, you have the victim, the mother who's the victim and who's a victim to her circumstances and who's afraid of everything. So you've got these totally two different kind of mothers, and we all know, right? If you're a daughter and a mother and daughter relationship is very contentious because there's so much learning there. I mean, you see, for me, it's always like you see yourself in your mother, and sometimes you think, no, I don't want to be my mother. And other times you think, oh, you know what? That's why my mother did what she did, because I can feel her, because I know. Well, this is a bit of the conversation. This is the conversation we're going to have today with Dr. Tayo. Dr. Tayo and I, we spoke, maybe a year and a half ago, but that doesn't matter. This is going to be a very exciting subject. And if you in a mother and daughter relationship, sit back, put on your earbuds, take a walk, whatever, but stay tuned. This is something you don't want to miss. On that note, hello, Dr. Tayo. How are you today?
I'm wonderful, Carina. Thank you so much. And nice to see you and nice to be on your show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And it's so nice to have you back. Like we were talking off air, I don't believe how much time has gone by since we last spoke. And also we realized like how long we've actually known each other now. I mean, okay, 2 years or whatever. It's still 2 years, right? So that's pretty cool.
Probably a bit more, actually.
Probably. So tell us a bit, Tayo, tell us a bit about you, about Tayo, about your mother, because that's a bit about what this whole podcast is going to be about.
Okay, well, my mother didn't, from the outside, look like you were talking of victims, and she was a housewife. She was not allowed to work, even though she had, got a degree. And my father was very domineering, so the marriage broke up. Very contentious situation, and he basically left my mother with 4 children. Then at some stage came to get me because I was going to a government school in another city, the city where he lived. And I was cut off from, therefore, my mother and my sisters for like about 3.5 years.
Wow.
Didn't see them, nothing, no communication, etc. And at that time, like I said, my mother had absolutely nothing. So she was trying to build her life. And I think at that time, human nature basically thinking that, I'm going to grind her into the ground, and she's going to come begging and that kind of stuff. And
Yes.
I don't know what it was, but I suspect it's way back in her genes as well. She just refused to give up, so she just kept on hustling. Is what I could say, because these days they would call her a single mother, but I never would have thought about, and she will not accept that title. But say that she dealt with the circumstances, and she went into catering, she went into construction, she went into managerial position. She basically wanted to do something, because for the other children that were with her, other sisters, she was the person who was bringing them up, essentially. Anyway,
Yes.
so I was in this school, and I was generally a bright student. That was why I was, I entered the school. We had an examination, and it was a government school for the whole country. And there were 60 of us, and I was one of those 60. And I left early in school. So I was, a decent student.
Well, you had to be, sorry, I had to interject, just hold that a moment. You had to be a pretty good student if you going forward a whole lot of years and you actually became a doctor, just by the way. Medical doctor. I just had to interject that, but we'll talk about that later.
Okay. Well, so then I had got in, started classes, but I was, like I said, living with my father, not seeing any of my siblings or my mother. And there was let me put it politely, his mistress, who was living with us,
Mm.
living with him. And, when you hear a story, she was awful, is my best description without, going out off at a tangent. But she was terrible. Anyway, and treated me abominably. And my father
Oh.
did nothing much to protect me. So anyway, I was miserable enough that by the fourth year in school, uh, end of first term exams, I came second to the last in class.
Ah, yes, I'm not surprised.
It took me years to put that together, that the unhappiness had translated. This took me years. And when I say years, I would say maybe in the last maybe 4 or 5 years. I
Wow.
didn't connect the two.
Yes. Yes.
That must have been the problem. Anyway,
Yes.
so my mother actually had an in into some of the what was going on, the teachers, etc.,
Mm-hmm.
and realized that things were not going very well. So the end of term, she came with a van she had acquired and collected me. I was surprised. I didn't know anything about it. So this is end of term school, and I had
Mm-hmm.
my uniform, clothes I was going to change into to go back to the house. Very few books, but nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
So she collected me with basically the clothes I stood up in and a change of clothes. So, next to no books because it was end of term
Yes.
assembly, a
Yes.
different city. So I did not have the rest of my clothes. I did not have my school textbooks, nothing, no photographs, nothing. And that entire part of my life is like gone. And that
Yes.
included things like my birth certificate, which he held. Nothing I had with me. So it was a grind.
Mm-hmm. Must
But
have been.
it was a grind. But I was happier. That
Mm-hmm.
I was lucky in that I had a particular classmate of mine who lent me her notes. And her notes, I copied them out. In those days, longhand, no such thing, voice record, oh, none of that stuff. Copied
Yes.
notes out longhand so that I could have something to revise with, etc. So
Mm-hmm.
1.5 years later, we come to the end of the fifth year in the secondary school, is what we call it, and have exams. And we also entered for another set of exams, which are government exams. But by
Mm-hmm.
that time, I had now found my flow, and I was in the top 3 in the entire country for the government schools, male and female.
Wow, that was brilliant. It's amazing what environment does and what family do and what and like and that I think I just hold that thought. Sorry, I just want to just reiterate that because a lot of times in relationships people always say they're staying together because of the children, and you don't realize how you're destroying your children's lives really by staying together in and bringing them up in that contentious whirlwind of horrible stuff really.
Argument.
So yes, so people, so I just wanted to reiterate that, and then I wanted to just mention something. How we always talk about fairy tales, we just want to go back to the wicked stepmother. There's always truth in every single story. So I just wanted to mention that one too. And of course, the wicked stepmother has an effect on the child, which has an effect on the school and on her life again. Sorry. Thank you.
No, it was a whole ecosystem of interlinked things, because, like I said, when my father left us and my mother, she had nothing, we had nothing,
Yes.
and because of that, and because of her strength of character and purpose, she always said her children were the most important things to her, and I happened to
Yes.
be the eldest of the whole lot of them, so I was meant to set an example, if you like. So with that, through the years, and through her sheer tenacity, my mother started off with technically 20 20 chickens at the backyard because she just wanted something for herself.
Mm,
And
mm.
she had started that around the time when she knew that things were falling apart, but she still had 20 chickens in the backyard. And that grew into an empire pretty much. And my mother became not rich, wealthy from being a poultry. And my mother always called herself a poultry farmer. And at the height of it all, she had a farm with at least 20,000 chickens. She was one of the first people to bring, yes, okay, these days people don't like it, but, to bring cages in for the birds so that, and they were fairly well treated because we used to go there. I used to do all these things with my mother, feed the chickens, clean the litter. Ha, no, something you don't want to know. The eggs and try and sell the eggs, etc. So she developed all of that. She ended up having cows, goats, sheep. She had a feed mill. She built up herself all of this, and it was not by begging or borrowing or stealing, because in Nigeria you don't have, nobody gives you loans. You just kept on reinvesting, putting your time to putting your energy until she got to where she got to. And she
Yes.
had that for 50 years.
Wow.
She kept on going, and the only reason it stopped was because the managers were just stealing blind.
Yeah.
When you're 80, you don't want to be going there every day to start overseeing some people, but management was a problem. And but she had such an influence in the poultry industry for the entire region we were in. People refer to she lived and breathed it. She was always wanting to help people so that they too could do the same thing. And she would go there and she'd set up there, she would give them advice, and she was in her full flow. And that is the model I grew up with. She passed 2021. And I believe that she passed that baton to me in terms of strength, of character, of purpose, and being able to overcome no matter what life throws at you.
Yes. Yes. I love that story. It's such a beautiful story, and to think, yes, and I mean, like, what a beautiful example you had. There's nothing else to model that. There's the only way you're going to go do anything is actually to just go up, model that, and that's it. There's no victimhood. There's nothing there, and there's no accepting excuses or no. I'm not, this isn't happening. It's like, yes, I don't care. It's not going to happen. I'm going to make it happen. I
Yeah.
love that. That is
Yeah.
beautiful. And so, how's that influenced in your life now? Like, how did it influence it? How did it mold your life, really? That's probably a better question, right?
Yeah. I could say that I'm quite a decisive person. I take responsibility for the good and the not so good and the downright whatever that happens.
Yes.
I try not to produce excuses and say, okay, fine, it didn't go as well as I wanted. Let's figure out something else. But I don't sit around dwelling on things. I go with the things that work and the things that don't work. If for any reason I don't like a situation, as you know, we talked about what happened with the business. That didn't really go the way I wanted, although there are some wonderful things that happened because there's every situation, there is always a lesson and a blessing, I believe.
Yes. Yes. That's exactly what I agree with.
Always a lesson and a blessing. And you take those and you move forward with it, and you will have much more blessings if you take those on board. And from that, the manpower, the lives that got affected in terms of what I was able to do, and also my staff who ended up with wonderful moving forward from all the things, for all the time I had invested in them. I consider that a huge win.
Yes.
A huge win, which is almost legacy building, if you like. And of course, there has to be a good name. And I've always maintained that you have to have integrity for a good name. So with that, and anything I tackle, yes, every so often you say, oh my gosh, can I do that? Can I do that? And you say, yes, I can, because I've done that before. And I did it through university, because when you go in for any program, there's no guarantee that you're going to come out of it. Anything can happen to you.
Yes. Yes,
And
of course.
yeah,
Of course.
anything could happen to you. And I wrote about that in a book of mine called Transform, saying, yeah, everybody was hoping, yeah, she's going to do that. And, you hit a few roadblocks, but you keep on going. And as you keep on going, so yes, that has been through my life, saying, don't become a victim, don't make excuses. You don't hit a roadblock, just keep going. Figure it out.
Yes, yes, I love that, and that's exactly my motto as well. It's like, you know what? You walk, you hit a roadblock. Sometimes you can get through it, and sometimes you can jump over it or go around it or whatever. And sometimes, if you have to take a few steps back to regroup it, that's fine. But just continue.
Yes, continue
Go.
the journey, because I'm sure you've heard this interesting story about somebody walking along. There's a hole in the road. They fall into the hole the first time. They take the road again. There's a hole in the road, and even though they say, oh, there's no way to go, they still fall into the hole. The third time they go, and there's a big hole. It's wider. They go around the hole. The fourth time they take a different road. I said, hold on, let's take another road, because it's a journey. You don't have to go through that same place.
No, you don't. And in fact, it's more fun to take a different route sometimes. There's different foliage, or there's different environment, different people you meet along the way.
So it's those kind of stories that are always inspiring, motivating, and allow you to expand and say, it doesn't have to be this particular way or this particular result. What can you do to make it better? It may be a different situation, a different person, a different opportunity, but don't give up.
Yes. Keep that vision, and of course it does change. Like the vision, it's there, but it just changes because your mind expands, your heart expands, and you just see things differently, and you see more.
Yes.
And you realize the vastness of life, and that's beautiful as well.
And I know you've done that for yourself. I definitely know, because you wouldn't be here talking if you didn't have that strength of character and of purpose.
Yes, of course. But that's why we have these conversations, because there's always someone out there that can hear the message. And sometimes, like the hole in the road, sometimes they have to listen to it a few times. And then it's like, oh, that's what you're saying. That will make a difference in my life. Let me go and do this and this. Yes. And like I always say, or we always say in the podcast, is like, if you can influence one person positively with a conversation like that, that's huge, because they influence others who influence others who influence others. So you've always got that ripple effect.
Absolutely correct.
Which makes it even more beautiful, right?
Yes.
So tell me, so you've learned all these beautiful things from your mother, the strength of character, the integrity, and all this. And then what happened? Like, where are you now? What have you done that's similar to her almost? Or no, maybe the better question is that she influenced you somehow in what you're doing now, right?
Yes. What I'm doing now is empowering women as they go through menopause. Wow. And it's as anybody who's been through menopause or going through it, there is very little awareness around. It can become scary. A significant amount of women, about 80%, experience significant symptoms. It's so bad that some of them actually leave the workforce. Even worse, women do take their lives because of the hopelessness they feel and the inability to see forward past it, because they're not getting help. And it's my belief that it's what occurs that we don't have enough women in higher echelons, executive positions, directorships, etc. Because just as they're getting there, having worked their asses off to get to those positions, menopause comes, or perimenopause hits them on the head, and they can't cope. they're too tired, they're exhausted, they have other responsibilities, they have mood changes, they're anxious, they're putting on weight, and they're becoming forgetful. So all those things that they need, they can't no longer hold it together.
Mm, mm.
And in falling apart, they feel that they have to fall back. And falling back means that those things that they have worked for, they have put their energy into, they're no longer able to become those CEO, those partners, those directors, those expand their businesses when they're entrepreneurs, but they draw back. And of course, things move on because there are people always waiting to take their positions.
Yes.
Usually the male of the species, because they don't have menopause in the same way, or not affecting them in any way close to this. But it can have profound effects. And I believe that if we now, because the same thing happens to me, I went through menopause and it was rough. But because of what I actually got from my mother, in a way, and the kind of you don't just bow and say, oh gosh, this is the way it's got to be. I said, I've got to figure this out, because if I was going to move on, I had a job, I needed to do the job well. How was I going to go through feeling tired and, just not, you're spending more hours to do the same thing that you did a few years ago. You're working longer hours, you're working weekends just to keep up with your work. And I said, this won't do, because you'll burn out. And a lot of people get burnt out. So it was figure it out. What could I get help with? Even as a physician, you think I'd know better. But they don't teach us that in medical school. It's just the hormones are declining, you get menopausal. Now, not the effects on the woman, not the physical effects on the woman. We didn't learn even that. Forget about the psychological effects on us. Forget about the effects on your brain. We knew nothing. So I had to now start with myself as a guinea pig, knowing that I need to get past this.
Yes.
And I need to get past it. So yes, with a combination of things, figuring out what worked, what didn't work, what was pure fluff, conjecture. I tried everything. When I say everything, I mean everything. And at the end of the day, when I thought that I was already on very high doses, because I opted to take hormone replacement, I was on really high doses, and a colleague of mine said, boy, that's a high dose. And I thought, oh, okay, time to stop.
Mm-hmm.
I was still on it because it was not alleviating all my symptoms.
Mm-hmm.
But when I stopped, the things that I had been doing in the background now took over. And I discovered, oh my gosh, I am feeling so much better. So that's what I now realize. It's not one or the other. It's a combination of things that will get you past menopause so that you can be kind of like successful and vital. And for me, and for many others, you are actually better off. Once you've gone beyond menopause, you're more exuberant, you're more vital, I'm stronger than I was pre-menopause, funnily enough, because of doing the various things that helped me get beyond it. Yeah.
Yes. And I love that, because there's so much like secrecy around it, and embarrassment, and fear, a lot of fear, because like, oh, you know what, if you go, once menopause hits, society says you dead as a woman, you don't deserve to have a life, you old, you don't deserve to have relationships, you don't deserve to, you become stupid, you become fat, you become ugly, you don't deserve to have a loving relationship, you don't deserve intimacy. And so, of course, obviously, then there's that huge fear. Like, how do you help your clients through that? Because it's not like that, right?
No, it's not. It needs to be. But there are, just as you mentioned, the societal stigma is so strong. Yes. And sometimes even the older women themselves have passed down this fear to you, because they don't talk about it to their children. How many, of us had our parents talk to us about menopause? My mother never talked to me about menopause, or I didn't know, in fact, when she was menopause. It's looking back and I'm thinking, so when she was having those kind of fits, she must have been menopausal. But nobody talked about what was happening to them. And nobody told you, because they didn't find a way out. They would pull up their big girl panties.
And they were terrified. They must have been terrified.
Yes.
Because imagine, like, you suddenly, your brain goes, you can't remember things, or suddenly you put on weight, or extremely tired or whatever. It's like, what's happening? This isn't who I am. So
Yeah.
you've got to deal with those emotions as well. So it must be a terrifying place to be.
You feel like you're losing it. And I remember for years, I used to tell our mother, she starts with something and she says, "Come on, say what you mean." It's like she wanted us to guess the ending. And I'm saying, "So what do you mean? Say what you mean." And
Yes.
that must have been this, part of it. But I didn't know at the time. Like I said, we weren't taught in medical school, and she didn't know any better. So it for a lot of women, particularly now, where women are playing an ever increasing role in the finances, whether their own or family finances, it's important for us to be not taken out by this
Yes.
very natural thing and not be subject to stigmas or
Yes.
other things that will diminish our our presence, our influence, our light,
Yes.
because that just leads to what? Depression, anxiety. You no longer feel valued. You can't
Yes.
see your value in the world. You're just another person existing. And we're not put on this earth to exist. We're put here to thrive.
Yes,
So,
yes, I agree with you.
mm,
And you start hating yourself even more, I'm sure. So that the self-love, the little bit of self-love that you started developing, if you did that. I mean, a lot of times it's superficial stuff, right? So
yes.
if it's superficial stuff, it's even worse because then that just comes crashing down.
It- it-
So you have to start working with yourself, your inner being, almost your inner core, and get to where you have to go. And that
yes.
probably that's a beautiful thing as well, because now you don't the superficiality doesn't count anymore. It doesn't matter
It, you
anymore about what people think or what people say. You've got to come back to yourself and say, hey, you know what, this is me and I can get through this.
I can get through
And
this.
it's
And,
okay.
part of what happened all this time is that it's what I call the five superpowers. And it's superpowers we all have. We just have to pay particular attention. It's all health based. Because the true
Yes.
definition of health, when you talk to people, is not just your body, it's your mind and your spirit. And how do you bring all of it together to get the best out of moving from the childbearing years to menopausal years and postmenopause, which is actually these days with life expectancy the greater part of your adult life. You can't
Yes.
put your
Yes.
head in the sand and just check out. You need to be able to make it valuable. Otherwise, between 45, say, or even 50 and 80, you can't be miserable at 85. You can't be miserable for that amount of time.
No,
You need to
such a waste.
it's such a waste. And you could make it so rich because you have
Yes.
experience on your side. So those superpowers are actually all health based. You have the usual nutrition and exercise. You also have sleep, which is an important superpower. And it's all based on getting energy. You have your mental acumen and your mental abilities, because without mental abilities, you know what happens. And then you have what I call Zen or tranquility or calm, which is essentially stress reduction, but I like to put a nice positive spin on it. So you have all these things that enrich you. And if you tweak each one properly, you get through menopause like so successfully. You wonder why is anybody bothering? But you do need to know the specific way of dealing with them and combining them, because we all know people who have weight. You go weight, you do something, you do a diet, and as soon as you finish, you put on weight even more than you did, because it
Yes.
was
Yes.
taken in isolation. It was not taken together and in the context of what was happening in your body with your
Yes.
hormones.
Yes.
Mm.
Yes.
So that's
Yes.
yeah. So that
Yes.
was an evolution in terms of the discovery. But I'm always amazed when I have clients and they didn't take the 5 years or plus that it took me to get to a reasonable place. They just get the results because it's a fast track. And
Yes.
when you have somebody who is you're accountable to, you're more likely to do it, as you know. And it says, this is what I need. I'm a woman on a mission. I can't afford to be sidetracked by this. What do I do?
Yes, yes. And the best part is that yes, you're entitled to ask those questions. Again, like we can't just like, oh, woe is me, just throw down and die because oh it's that time or whatever's happening. Um, so it's also that is you can do it. You can have a beautiful life. You can live on your life on your terms, and you
Yes.
just have to take charge of it, right? I love it that you use the holistic approach because I mean menopause is holistic, right? It affects mind, body, soul. It affects everything, and
It's a
especially
hormone.
like yes, and
It's your
especially the
hormone. Your
anxiety.
hormones go through the whole body. So if you realize that because it's a hormone which affects the whole body, it's going through the blood system, it can affect anything. Your
Yes,
hair, dull, thin, your skin, dry, your vajayjay, dry because it atrophies, breast tenderness, joint aches and pains. It can affect anything. It's a hormone.
yes, yes, yes. And again, I love the atrophy part. Like again, if you don't use it, you lose it, people. So you've got to you've got to do the exercise, or you've got to walk, or you've got to use it. And again, with the brain, because a lot of times people also just like, oh, you know what, I'm 50 or whatever. I don't have to exercise my brain or learn something new, or I'm 30 or whatever. You know, it's like, what are you doing? Do you realize what you're doing to yourself?
Bad
And then
mistake.
and then you see like how the rate of Alzheimer's is just increasing. The sign of the
Totally.
times and the way we're
We
living our
now
lives.
know, yeah, we now know that things like Alzheimer's there is a lifestyle component
Yes,
because
yes,
just as you said, you don't use it, you lose it. Whereas if you learn new things, it opens up new pathways in your brain. So the brain is not a finite box. We tend to think that just because we see the physical, the brain, we can't improve or increase the capacity of our brain. We can always open up new pathways, and it's a study called neuroplasticity, by opening new pathways by doing things, taking a different route to work, learning a language, picking up a musical instrument. We can always open up new pathways. It's like when you go down a road in a forest and you open the path. First path, but the more you groove that path, the easier it is. And the brain is just like that. It has pathways
yeah.
that move and open and get better.
No, it's beautiful. And you don't have to go down the neurodegenerative route. So, Taya, I have to ask you. So if a client comes to you and says, you know what, I feel like I'm losing my mind because my memory suddenly is gone, um, or I've gained weight, or whatever it is. What is your first advice to them?
Um, just as you were saying, taking it combination, I look at the whole thing and, what else is going on. And usually they have one concern above all others because you'll find that it's a multitude of symptoms. They have all these other things going on. So if it's on
Yes.
a one-to-one basis, what is the one thing that you are most concerned about? And
Mm.
usually they'll tell me. For the vast majority of women, funnily enough, even if they don't recognize it to start off with, but when you question them, it's the fact that they're not sleeping properly. And sleep is so important in being able to, because it's during sleep that you consolidate your memories. It's during sleep that your body almost goes through a cleaning cycle and it throws out dead cells and it rejuvenates the ones that you have there. And so you wake up and you end up feeling more refreshed and rejuvenated. So
Yes.
sleep is critical for that energy generation.
Mm.
So if we now go through the sleep, and if you sleep well, you find that you can make the decisions because your brain is also takes short-term memory and puts it in long-term place, so you can remember things better. You find that you're able to do the other things that you need to do, be they nutrition. You make better decisions, be they exercise, nutrition, meditating, things like that. Taking up something, you make better decisions. So a
Mm.
lot of the time, not always, but a majority of the time. But at the same time, we're not just doing one thing. We're adding in bits and pieces as they become necessary to buttress it, because at the end, it's like compound interest. All of a sudden, everything just goes whoosh. And by the time you add these little bits and things, they don't become individually. 1 + 1 + 1 does not become, or two times two times two, or two. Basically, it compounds. You discover that they're multiplicative. So the sum is more than the whole is more than the sum of the parts.
Yes,
So
yes,
if you do a little bit here and there, the combined effects is far more than the individual effects added together, or even
yes,
the individual effects. So it's putting them together in a way that the woman can say, hey, sometimes we start very slow.
mm, 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 mm.
Sometimes we start, at the clicking pace, or we change the pace. It depends on the woman. On a one-to-one, it depends on the woman. I've heard people who says, I want to start very slow. Very slow can mean a 1 minute walk. Seriously,
Yes,
doing
yes,
something can mean a 1 minute walk, and then we tailor it up. It depends on your ability. So all those things are tailored to the individual, but they need to be committed to doing it. They need to be disciplined enough to do it, because they've got me as an accountability partner. I am not here to be your friend. I am here to be your coach, to say, have you done this? And when are you doing it, and how are you doing it?
yes, yes. I love that, and I think it also gets to a point like you see with a lot of like the coaching clients as well. You have to get a point where you say, it's enough now. I don't want this life anymore. I've had enough. What am I going to do about it? And then you actually lift yourself up and say, okay, I'm ready to do what I have to do.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, a lot of times we have to get to that point before we do anything. And maybe it is also to get to the point where you're feeling so bad about yourself, or you feel that lack of sleep, or that is affecting your life, and your life is just falling apart, where you're going to go like, what am I going to do about it?
True. I mean, at the end of the day, just as you said, the woman has to be committed to want to change. If you don't want to change, I cannot want to change for you. You have to want to change. You have to be committed to change, be able to be, I will give the surroundings to it, but it must be something that you committed to, that you're
Yes.
disciplined, and that you will do. You know what they say about what's the best anything? Exercise, for instance. It's the one that you will do, but you must
Yes.
be committed to doing it. I'm not in business of telling you to go and run a marathon, for instance, when I know you hate just the thought of it, and you can't get me to run. I just refuse to run. It's not me. Other people, they're in heaven. So it's what's he going to do? The one that you will do, but then you say, how can you tweak it up a bit so that it actually makes a difference, so that it
Yes.
actually improves your life? Because if you stay in the same place, what we do know is that there's something called entropy. You stay in the same place, it will deteriorate. There's nothing that stays in the same place for long. It will deteriorate, it'll degenerate. And the body is the same, it'll degenerate.
Yes, yes, yes. And again, I'm going to go back to Alzheimer's. That's also why we have such an increased rate of Alzheimer's disease, because of it. Because people are just like becoming sedentary, and the lifestyle is just. But then again, it's about choice. That's a beautiful thing about life. You've got choice, so you can sit and do nothing, or you can change your life and make it beautiful. So I love that. And if you've got Dr. Tayo after you, believe me, you're going to follow you're going to follow and make your life better.
Continuous learning, there's nothing like continuous learning to keep your brain cells going. And
Yes,
like you, Carina, continuous learning just brings riches that you would never have known existed.
yes,
Which is
yes,
on your podcast. I know that you do some research. You've got all these various things that you've got from the people you've interviewed, and that has to be a rich treasure trove in itself.
yes,
So it's
yes,
all what you learn, or you listen to people. You have various things that happen, and you say, "Oh my gosh, that little," and you go off at a tangent, and you learn. And learning is one of those things that I think if we had to do without it, would be completely shriveled and die.
yes, yes, of
Mm,
course,
mm,
yes.
mm.
And of course, and probably the the next thing after that is actually doing it. Because if I think about a year and a half ago, well, it's nearly 2 years that I've had the podcast. If I think about video, I thought I hated video. It would.
Sorry, that was an alarm, which is why it kind of like went off.
Oh, okay. If I think about like video, how I hated video, right? I wouldn't do video, so I'd procrastinate and procrastinate and procrastinate. And now it's like so easy. You even do lives. Switch it on, do it, and that's it. Because that's the only way you're going to learn as well, is to actually throw yourself in and just do it. And whatever, like, there's some really bad videos where the lighting's really bad, or whatever, or, you laugh, or you don't connect with your guest, and it's all part of the fun.
It was like this alarm that went off. I thought I'd put everything off, and I had. But alarms go through whatever silencer, they don't care. Alarms go through everything. And I thought I put everything off. Everything is, way away. And you just have to roll with it and say, okay, fine. Moving on.
It's
you
fine.
Can't allow it to take you down.
No, of course not. And if you think about how there's no coincidences, right? Maybe we should see why the alarm went off and go back and see what we were talking about. It might be something relevant to something else.
It's a programmed alarm. I had some surgery on my eyes recently, and I'm supposed to be putting in eye drops into it. So it's a programmed alarm for that one. And nothing strange. Because, like certain things, because we have such busy lives, you have to bring some organization to your life. Just like we planned this and said, okay, we didn't just assume that, you were going to be available at the same time as I was going to be available. Planned, we set aside the time, and the same thing, you say, okay, fine, I need to do this 3 times a day. I might forget because I get engrossed in something. How do I make sure that I actually continue? And so I set an alarm. So those kind of things make life so much easier, so that you can concentrate on the things that make a difference. And are more meaningful.
Yes, I love that. And then you still do what you have to do, but you don't have to think about it, because you don't have to think about like, oh no, I've got to put my eye drops in. Oh no, I hope I don't forget. Oh no, and then you just can't do anything, right?
Totally. It definitely helps to have a smoother life, if you like, without feeling that there are too many obstacles in the way, and meaningless obstacles, if you know what I mean.
Yes. We should just get rid of as many obstacles as possible to make our lives as simple and as beautiful as possible.
That's, I suppose, what Nirvana is, or whatever they call it, is all about. But can we actually get there? I think it's the journey that matters.
Yes.
And just as you were on this podcast about fear, it's the willingness to just keep on going, and to say that, yes, there will be fears. There's a famous quote by Jim Rohn, which I think you know. It says, "Don't pray it was easier, pray you were better." And I always like that, and says, yes, it's assuming that things are going to come up that I'm going to be afraid of, that I'm going to be fearful about, that I don't want to do. But if I'm better, it's going to come up whatever I do. Yes. But I don't have to shrink when it comes and seize and be unable to, just find my way through it, which, I'm not giving a roadmap. I just have to figure out my way around it somehow.
Yes. And you grow from it as well, which makes it beautiful, because then, and you can show other people how to do it as well.
Yes.
So it's just a win-win for everybody.
Yes.
It's beautiful. And of course, it's like sometimes it's so scary. You sit shivering in a corner, but you have to just, stop it, get up. You can shiver for a bit. You've got a few 5 minutes, okay, and then get up. Let's move on.
Totally agree. There are some times when you just go, but you can't stay in that valley forever.
No.
What your message is, part of your message for, people out there. You can't just stay in that place forever. Marshal whatever it is that will allow you to move away, from fear and find freedom.
Yes, yes, I love that. Thank you. And sometimes you can't do it on your own, because you don't see it. And that's when you need a helping hand.
Correct.
You need someone to hold your hand, a coach or a friend or whatever it is, to just say, you know what, I'm here. I've got your hand. And sometimes I don't have to say anything to you,
Yeah,
but know that I've got your hand and I'm here.
correct.
And many times you're not even, in the same place almost, but it's all so, like, sometimes you just know that some people just, you're there for some people even if they're not in you with you at this time.
True.
And that's also important to know. So I'm loving this conversation. So tell us, Dr. Tayo, tell us a bit about where people can find you, right? um, for now, well, tell us where people can find you.
Okay. They can find me a number of ways. I'm on TikTok, I'm on Instagram, they can email me. My email is Dr. Tayo, DRTAYO, at getyoursassyback.com, which is what
I
I want
love that.
to live in.
That's
So it's
beautiful.
GETASSY no, I missed something. You know what I'm saying? Get GETYOURSASSYBACK.com. And on TikTok and Instagram, I am the Dr. Tayo, THEDRTAYO. They can always find me there. And there I drop a lot of, suggestions that people can pick up on and things to do that could help them and maybe bust a few myths while we're about it.
Yes, yes. That's that's the most important. So now tell us a bit. What are the most, before we go, right? So that people can. What are the three biggest myths about menopause?
Biggest myth is that it is a disease. It's
Wow.
not a disease, it's a normal phenomenon, just like puberty. When you came into your childbearing years, it's the nature's way of saying you're past your childbearing years. Have a nice kick up your legs now because you don't have to, you no longer have periods. You don't have to worry about them. You don't have to worry about tampons and all those kind of things or pads. You don't want to have to worry about getting pregnant. And you can therefore face the next part of your life without these, things happening to you. So it's a natural thing. It's not a disease. That's number one. Number two, they think that it's only old hags that become menopausal, as if there's a choice in it. And it says, no, you can be menopausal or experience the symptoms from as young as 42 ish, 40 ish. The average age of menopause, and menopause is the complete end of your period for 12 months, is 51. And the period before can be anything from 7 to 10 years. So you can imagine that from 40. So just when you're feeling on top of it all, it starts happening, but you think it's because you're working too hard or doing something else. Whereas if you think about it, you discover that, it's possible. And if it is, you have an earlier chance of making sure that it doesn't become a problem. What would be the third thing? That nothing can be done about it because a lot of people, even when they realize it, have been to even other doctors, etc., who don't have the same a requisite training or experience, and they tell them to suck it up. There's nothing wrong with you, and it can be one of the most devastating things because they know there's something wrong with them. They've been told by an authority figure that there is nothing wrong with them, so they think that there is something wrong with them other than menopause. They think that it's a flaw in character. They're not strong enough. All kinds of things, and it brings to a loss of a woman's confidence. And here is what I would share with any woman who is going through anything and they feel it's bad enough that they go and see their doctor. If you go and see anybody who tells you it's normal, get a second opinion. get a third for that matter, because your reason for going to a doctor sufficient enough, you weren't skiving. You weren't thinking that, oh, I'm just going to waste some time at a doctor's. There was something you wanted to get to the bottom of it.
Yes.
Bottom
Yes.
of
Yes.
Get to the bottom of it. And hopefully you find somebody sooner than later who will help you get to the bottom of it.
Yes. Yes, I love that. Again, we always have to say that get a second opinion. Don't trust just the first person that says something to you, because doctors can make mistakes as well.
It's not so much mistakes, I don't think. There's a combination of things, and most of them just aren't trained, don't have the right tools to say. I mean, I've had people who say, male doctors usually, of course, oh, you're too young. And look, menopause can happen as early as your late 30s. There is such a thing as early menopause. But if you've got the right collection of symptoms, you actually don't need a doctor to diagnose menopause. So that's a bonus number 4. You do not need it.
Yes.
There's a collection of symptoms. If you realize there's a collection of symptoms, you start having hot flashes, almost invariably you're in menopause. But before then, you're exhausted, you can't sleep, you're putting on weight for no known reason, even though you used to put on weight. You're feeling anxious, forgetful, panic attacks, palpitations, and your periods are becoming irregular. You do not need anybody, a doctor, to tell you you're probably in menopause. You can go and confirm it some other ways, but the tests generally don't work because your hormones are going up and down, and they can catch it when it's up and it's normal. So there's no real good, effective test for your hormone levels. They can measure it, but even when it's supposedly low, the low is meant to be when you're practically, no hormones. And most people are not there for most of the part of the journey. So be careful of the word normal, because it's a range, and the range at the lower end means that you're completely depleted. So saying you have normal doesn't mean much. What means much is taking how you're feeling and the symptoms you're having in connection with whatever levels they're measuring, and they're not anywhere near as important as the symptoms you are having.
Yes. Yes. Oh, I love that. And I love the passion.
It's just, I just want to get it out there that people, if you feel that, if you're looking at it and you're saying, oh my God, particularly women in your 40s, period, you don't notice these things because you've been used to just your body working the way it is. Or all of a sudden you discover, I'm tired. I must be stressed. I must be, taking on too much at work. The kids are being a bit of a pain. I have too many things to go to. And you don't realize that your body is also adding to all those signals and just revving it up a bit more stress, a bit less sleep, a bit more panic attacks, a bit more something. So just a bit more of everything. Which is why you also need a bit of everything to get you back on track.
Yes, that makes sense. Makes sense. So I love that. So if you, for all the people watching out there, just look at all this passion that Dr. Tayo has with the subject. And if you're feeling anything like this, I mean, if there's anything that you're worried about or whatever, just reach out to Dr. Tayo and chat to her, right? She can, just don't suffer on your own, because there's no need to. Don't be ashamed of how you're feeling, right? Don't be ashamed of the weight or whatever it is. Don't be afraid to step out and say, hey, you know what, I've got a problem, or this is bothering me. Please, what do you think? What do you know about this? And know there's always someone out there to support you.
Absolutely. And I can offer something else to people, because just on the website, which is getyoursassyback.com, there is also a quiz they can take and see whether those things apply to them. What is their number one menopause mistake is a quiz that's there, and that's one way of getting hold of me.
That's beautiful.
It's a completely free resource that they can tap into and say, what don't I know about menopause? What could be affecting me, and how can I do something about it? And at the end of the quiz, there is a full report.
I love it. So, and of course, all the details will be in the description box. So check out the description box and go and see this resort.
Well,
Go and
beautiful resorts. It's winter here.
go and check out the resource, and you're not alone. Don't be alone. Don't be afraid. Find your freedom from this, and find the blessings, because there always are blessings. I love this. So, Dr. Tayo, before you go, what last thing do you want to tell our audience?
There's nothing to fear but fear itself.
That's true. I love that. And on that beautiful note, thank you, everybody. This has been beautiful. Thank you, Dr. Tayo. It's been such an honor and a pleasure to have you. And possibly we might have to have a second podcast, just to maybe dive deeper into some of these issues, and just break those myths, and so that people can realize that there's no shame in feeling like this. There's no shame. There's no, and you can't destroy yourself because of something that you don't know. There is help out there. So, on that note, thank you, Dr. Tayo.
Oh, thank you, Carina, for having me.
So much thank you for being here. This has been like an honor and a privilege. And yes, I think we'll see each other soon again. Thanks, everyone. Bye.